We're going to be kicking off our first of two sessions just to kind of teach, equip, envision. And I'm going to be doing this first session. And what we're really focusing on today is the discipleship journey, right? So you can see my making sure you're moving forward and moving others forward as well. And the main theme for today, it really is discipleship. And now, you might get sick of hearing about discipleship in this church, but I hope you don't, because it really is the core mission of what we do as a church. It's the core mission of what we do as a movement, every nation across the world. And I hope you know that it is the core purpose and mission of your group, making disciples. And if you've done our group leader training, I know a lot of us did it together in our leadership groups last year. Some of you have done training since then, and hopefully a lot of you are going to be doing our new group leader training that's coming up, our online course, but I'll announce all of that later. But the main theme of that is discipleship, making disciples, and how Connect groups are disciple-making groups. That's really what we do. And I really want today, I realize, even in my own life and my own group leading, I remember before coming to Every Nation, Dave and I have led quite a few groups together. And I think if you'd asked us, even a couple of years ago, what is the core purpose of Connect Group? I'm not sure I would have said making disciples. I'm not sure that would have been. I'm really pastoral, so it probably would have been it's pastoral community. We've got to meet people's needs, we've got to care for one another, and that's great, and we really want our groups to be doing that, but it is not the core purpose of why we meet together and why we have groups. And maybe some of you, I've heard people say, and we call them Connect groups, they're about fellowship, connecting, building community, building relationships. And we know that's super important, especially here in London, right? We need to be really intentional about building community and relationships and doing fun stuff together. But that is not the core purpose, the core reason why we meet with our Connect groups. It's not even about reading our Bibles together. It's not even about growing in our knowledge of God and Christian stuff. Because if that is just us growing in knowledge, getting together to talk about cool Bible stuff that we learned, that maybe we know, and it's not leading to us becoming more like Jesus and living like Jesus did, and it's not ending up with transformational discipleship, we're doing it wrong. So those are not what Connect Group is about. I mean, it is, but the main purpose of our groups is to make disciples. So I want to start off by asking, what is discipleship? Because we talk about it a lot, and I think it can be really helpful. Again, the unity. Let's make sure we're on the same page of what we believe discipleship is. And I really believe that discipleship is a lifelong journey. Okay, it's not any journey, because all of us are on lifelong journeys in every sense. But it is a lifelong journey, a lifelong process of becoming more like Jesus. That's it. That's discipleship. I remember once talking to someone about discipleship, and they were saying, well, yeah, I was discipled as a student. And I was like, cool, so did you stop being discipled? And they were like, yeah, I was discipled. And I think what they were meaning was that their foundations in faith were developed when they were a student. But discipleship never ends. I mean, it probably does when we go to, all of eternity with Jesus and we're going to be made like him. But even then, I think we're going to be being like Jesus and doing what Jesus did and being his disciples. I don't think we ever stop being disciples of Jesus. So discipleship is not something that has an end. It's a lifelong process. All of us are growing as disciples of Jesus. And again, we say discipleship is relationship. That's really, really, really important. It's not something that we do in isolation. Discipleship is growing in our relationship with God to the point where we have a relationship with God like Jesus had a relationship with God. I don't know if you want that. I want that. To hear from him all of the time, to relate to him perfectly as a father, to always be in communion and talking to him, hearing from him, being led by him. That is the process, discipleship, growing in relationship with God, but it's also growing in relationship with one another. Part of discipleship is being a community of people, the church. That's part of growing as a disciple, the way that Jesus related to other people, to his disciples. And then it's growing in relationship with lost people. Because discipleship is not just for us and our nice relationship with God and our nice relationship with each other. If we really want to be like Jesus, And if Christ-likeness is the aim of discipleship, we've got to become like Jesus in the way that we relate to people who don't know him and who are far from him. Because how much of Jesus' earthly ministry was to the lost, to the sinners, of which we are the fruit of that ministry? So this is discipleship, friends. It is the lifelong process of becoming more like Jesus. It does not end. We are all being discipled, and I hope we are all making disciples. And that is really what we're going to be talking about, like the main theme of today. And I want to say with this little diagram, discipleship is not straightforward. It's not a linear process of you're born again, and then you do this, and then, it's this nice little process. Wouldn't that be great? It's messy. There's ups and downs. Sometimes there's you move backwards before you move forwards, right? And that's true of our lives, and that's true of the people that we're discipling. And it's important that we have this realistic understanding of how discipleship looks. It's not straightforward. But I want to say the point of it for our own lives and for other people who we're discipling is to keep moving forward. The direction is important. It's fine if it goes up and down, and we all kind of go backwards and go forwards. But the trend needs to be that we are growing in Christ-likeness. I want to say and encourage us that discipleship is really our greatest calling. When Jesus, his final words to his disciples, we see in Matthew 28, the Great Commission, right? We talk about it a lot, but it's so significant. His final words to his disciples, go and make disciples, baptizing them and teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you. That is our greatest calling in this life, is to go and make disciples. But Jesus is saying to them, and teach them everything I taught you. We need to be learning from Jesus. We need to be growing. Because if we are not growing and becoming more obedient to Jesus, how are we going to help other people to grow in relationship with him and become obedient to him? Our greatest calling is to grow, is to move forward along that journey and to help people who are behind us to move forward as well. It's simple, right? Making disciples is our greatest calling. So, what helps us move forward? I want us to take a moment. We're going to have a bit of a group discussion. And the first thing I want you to do is kind of looking at that. Just reflect for a minute. Where are you on your discipleship journey? Like, you might be really close to being, born again, like you've not been a Christian in a long time. You may be quite far along the journey just because you've been walking with Jesus for a long time. You may feel like you're in an up. You may feel like you're in a down. You may feel like maybe you've gone a few steps back. You may feel like things are moving steadily forward, or maybe you might feel stuck, stalled. There's no right answer. Let's just take a minute to reflect, like, where are you on your discipleship journey? And then think about what's gotten you to this point. What has helped you to move forward? And you're in this room. You are mature believers. You are leaders. So I'm going to assume things have helped you to move forward in your discipleship journey. So we're going to take 5 to 10 minutes just in your groups answering those two questions. Where are you on the journey, and what has helped you to move forward? Cool, guys. If you could just wind down your chats. I think it's a great question. Something I think for us to reflect on regularly, like, how are you doing? Where are you? I think can be really helpful. But the second question of what has helped you to move forward is really what I want to focus on today. And I want to unpack that a little bit, because I think if we understand the things that help us to move forward and the things that help other people to move forward, that is what makes all the difference. And it's one thing to know things. We've actually got to do something about it. So that's something else we're going to be talking about. But there are so many different things that help us to move forward. I'm sure that as you chatted in your groups, a lot of people have different perspectives. I'm sure things that, like reading the Bible, coming to church, interacting with other people, there's a lot of things that help us to move forward. Reading books, doing courses. A big one for me is realizing suffering. I don't think I've grown as much through anything in my life as through the times of suffering. Didn't feel like I was moving forward, but when I surfaced from it, realizing how much God had done in me. There are so many different things, experiences that we have, maybe these mission trips you've been on, or being used by God, or receiving some ministry from someone else. There's so many different ways that we can move forward. And to move forward, we really do understand that you need to take some next steps, right? Because I think there are times where God pushes us along. I think we've all experienced that. But I even know, even reflecting on my experience of suffering and how I've moved forward in that, those could have been opportunities for me to move backwards. Or they could have been opportunities for me to just get stuck. You've got to take steps forward. We've got to work with God to move forward. And I think that's really important for us to understand for ourselves and also for the people that we are discipling. There's so much that we can do to help people move forward. But if they don't want to, if they're not willing, if they're not hungry, there's not much we can do. And I really want to say that from the beginning, because I recognize we're going to be talking about a lot of things that we can do and that we should do, they should do, let's all do. And that can make us feel a lot of pressure and responsibility for other people's discipleship. And I want us from the beginning to know two things. First and foremost, every single one of us is discipled by Jesus. We are discipled by Jesus himself. I don't know about you, but there's a lot of stuff Jesus has had to teach me. That's why we have the Holy Spirit. It's amazing. That's why we say our ministry is Spirit-empowered. We want to make Spirit-empowered disciples because it's not only about what we do. And you can trust that for your own life and for the life of the people who you are intentionally discipling, that there is a work of God going on in their lives. But the second thing is it's also their response to that work of God, right? We know we've been given free choice. We go through seasons of life where things stall, and there's many reasons. And we want to help. We want to remove as many obstacles as we can. It is our job to make discipleship and all these things, these next steps, available for people. But if they are not hungry to grow, if they don't want to move forward, if their goal and their ultimate end is not Christ-likeness, there's very little that you can actually do. And I want to release you from that burden to feel like you have to push everyone in your life to Christ-likeness. If they are not willing, they're not going to go. And the best thing that we can do in that situation is pray for people. Trust that God will move in their hearts. And occasionally, maybe an opportunity for a challenging conversation. That's what Jesus did. I've been really meditating on this idea that one of the reasons Jesus' ministry was so effective is because, and I've probably said this before, so forgive me if you've heard it, but it's because he offered high invitation and high challenge. That is how we bring change and growth in people's lives. High invitation, we love them, we're gracious towards them, we're open, we're non-judgmental. They're invited to be in relationship with us unconditionally. But we bring high challenge because this is what Jesus commands of us, to be fruitful disciples that make disciples. And if we're not going to call people to more lovingly, we're not helping them. I don't think we're loving them. We're certainly not discipling them. And do this with wisdom. God has not called you to go and rebuke everyone in your life. Trust that he will give you the opportunities. Even in our group, when we were talking in the first discussion time about people in our lives that have discipled us, somebody was mentioning that actually one of the most significant relationships is somebody that often challenges them to be more like Jesus and to keep coming back. And I don't know, do you have someone in your life who does that for you? If you don't, you should probably find someone or ask God for someone. But are you that for other people? Because if we love people, we gently want to bring them back to the main thing. So there are these many different ways that we can take steps forward. But as a church, as every nation in London, we've got to, have some specific ways, some specific steps that we offer. And that is what I want to unpack for us now. And this has really been on my heart for a long time, is to really help us to get this vision and this collective understanding and to get on board with what we do as a church, because you are in this family. And there are loads of things that we can do to help people move forward. And there are things other churches do, and that's wonderful. And sometimes they bless us and we use them. And there's loads of things that even you personally are going to do to help you move forward and people in your groups. But as a church, we have a growth track. And these are the things that we've decided are specific steps we want people to take to help them grow towards Christ-likeness, to help them grow from being lost to being a leader in God's kingdom, to being somebody who helps people to grow in Jesus, to use their gifts and to bring the kingdom to earth. So I have printed it out for you all. So you have a copy. You want to write on it. And I want to say that this is our growth track. These are our steps. And we've put it this way because I really want you to understand that every single step builds on the step before. They're all important, right? Even if we get somebody who comes in from like another church and they've been leading there, we don't just want to plop them right in the middle. We want everybody to go through this process because we believe that every single person, no matter how mature they are, experienced they are, has something that God can do to deepen their faith, to deepen their foundations, and to help them to grow in our ways because we really believe in them. And we really believe if we get people, and the best is not just people who come from other churches, people who just met Jesus through people in our church. And if we get them in and we get them to go through these steps, their lives will change and they have the potential to change so many lives around them. And I'm sure some of us are products of this, that these things have helped us to grow and to build those foundations. And I want to unpack this a little bit. But before we do, I want you, the reason I printed this out is that I actually want you, if you can, you don't have to if you don't want to, but just draw a big circle around the growth track, if you want to, or just in your mind. Because I want to say, discipleship is not about programs and courses. Discipleship is about relationship. And in that big circle, I want you to write Sunday services and connect groups. Because in the context of relationship, the growth track works. We're not a factory, a disciple factory, and we plug new people in and out pop wonderful, fully formed disciples, completed their discipleship. They get a certificate, you have been discipled. It would be great, it would be really easy. That's just not how it works. It's not biblical. This only works, this growth track only works in the context of relationship, in the context of people being plugged into this community of believers that gathers together, online, in person. We're a church, right? We don't want connect groups who are isolated from the body. And if you've got people in your connect group that are not members of our church, we don't really define members, we do actually in one of the follow courses, but who are not members and contributing to this body, maybe it's time to have a conversation with them. Because if you are plugged into relationship with this body, you are going to move forward. You're going to have the best chance to move forward in your discipleship because that was God's purpose for us. And we don't just want people to be plugged into the big body. We want local, small community. That's what disciple-making community, that's what our groups are, where we disciple one another. And that's another thing I want to release the burden from a little bit. Yes, you are discipling the people in your group. You are leading. And I hope that you do feel that sense of responsibility and that privilege. But we disciple one another. There are going to be people in your group who will disciple you in some areas. And that's beautiful. That's the body. That's the church. So these things happen in the context of relationship. And I want to say something else to that. I did my master's thesis on the follow course and on courses in general, discipleship courses, discipleship programs. And one of the biggest outcomes of my research was understanding that adults learn best in relationship with one another. We can put people through courses, we can give them knowledge, we can teach them, we can make them read books, we can talk at them. But if adults aren't given an opportunity to reflectively discuss what they've learned and to apply it to their specific context and their specific experience and ask questions and challenge and see it modeled, they will learn, they will know more, but it will not be transformational. Their lives won't change. And we do things in our courses that help that process, but it's never going to be enough. A course is never going to be enough. We need to walk in relationship with people. We need to talk with people. We need to live life and model what it looks like to be a parent and a spouse and a friend and a leader and a Christian who's suffering and a Christian who's confused and a Christian dealing with conflict. We model these things. And that is how people grow, and that is how people learn. And that's why our groups really are the furnace of discipleship. And I hope you really get that today. So I want to take some time to actually just go through our growth track. Because I realize our group leaders, as a group leader, every week, I hope you read the emails I sent you. Please do. I try and make them really brief. I respect your time and your email inbox. But every week I'm giving you, this is what's coming up in the church, and these are the next steps. Because one of our, the home part of your group notes, of the Connect group pattern, it's really important that you're plugging people into their next steps. And I think a lot of the time you're like, oh, okay, we've got this thing coming up, you should do it. Or, yeah, I did it like 7 years ago. It was good. Or maybe you did it 7 years ago and you don't remember. Or maybe you did it 7 years ago and you didn't like it. Right? I want us to get on the same page with what these next steps are that we are offering, because this helps you in your discipleship, personally, you growing, and for people in your group. We are putting these things on, this growth track, all these courses and these events, to help you be resourced to help people in your group. And so I just want to spend a few minutes going through each thing, and I want to answer this question. What would you or somebody in your group miss out on if they didn't do this thing? And I've got this from Lily, because she was using that to tell me something. And I love the way of looking at that. Like, what are you going to miss out on if you don't do this thing? Because it's communicating, you really want to do this. You will be left behind. You will miss out if you don't do this. So let's go through them quickly. So the first one there is follow one, right? We know about follow one. We've got follow one and doing one-to-one. Those are like our minimum foundations that we really want every single person who's in our church to go through, because those are foundation building courses. Follow one is 4 weeks. Usually we do it on Monday nights on Zoom, or we do it after church on a Sunday, which is really great if people prefer some kind of in-person relational group and community. But it is an amazing course that helps people to know more about who God is. Who God is, what God has done for them, how God wants to relate to them, and how they should respond to God. That's it. It's a course for people who don't know anything about God. It's a course for people who are seekers. It's not weird. And it's a course for people who've been Christians for years, because we deep dive study into the story of the prodigal son, and there is something for everyone to get out of it. It's a really amazing, amazing course to do to help people connect with the Father heart of God. And I don't know if you agree, but that is one of the foundations of our faith. So that's follow one. Then we've got one-to-one. Now, again, if you've been reading my emails, you'll know that this is our training theme, actually, for this term. Using one-to-one. I feel like I should have one. One-to-one. Using one-to-one with people. And a lot of you are already doing that, and you're amazing. And I've had some really good conversations with people who have just done one-to-one with like tens of people. But some of us aren't using it at all. And it is an amazing tool for discipleship. And it is an amazing tool for relational discipleship. And it's simply a little book that you go through with somebody. It's about 8 weeks. You commit to meeting for half an hour to an hour with this person, and you talk about these different foundational topics: God, sin, lordship, baptism. It's foundational for people who are just brand new Christians. What a great tool to use to help them to become established. But it's also a great tool to use with people who've been Christian for a long time, because you can always go deeper into those areas. It's an opportunity to get to know people, to build relationship, to have interesting, deep conversations about really important stuff. And I would say, like, a lot of people are like, but I don't want to do it because, I know it. Challenge it. You can always go deeper. God can always reveal more to you. And more than that, it's also an amazing tool for them to be trained in, to use with other people. So you can say, do one-to-one with me, so that you can be trained to do one-to-one with other people. Because that's the goal of one-to-one. We don't want to have a church where only our Connect group leaders go around doing one-to-one with people. Anybody who's done one-to-one can do one-to-one with somebody else. Steve Murrell even says, be a chapter ahead. So if you've done the first chapter of one-to-one and you're starting the second chapter, that person can go do the first chapter with someone else. We want to create a culture where we have disciple-making disciples, right? That is the only way we're going to reach this city. It's not going to be just us who are on staff. It's not going to be just us, the leaders in this room. It's going to be if we equip and empower every single person in our church to go out and make disciples. And then they may not even be great at it, but we resource them with truth that they can use. And then there's all this other stuff so we can figure it out if they've got some weird understanding or weird cracks in their foundation. So that's one-to-one. Then the next level there is follow two. So follow two, we up the stakes a little bit more, 6 weeks, always online on Zoom. And it's basically just foundations of the faith. again, for people who are brand new Christians or people who have been in the faith a long time, there's always something more. And for me, doing Follow 2 was just an amazing way to get to know what are the values and priorities of our church. And meeting leaders, meeting amazing people who are going to impart something. Like we are very serious about the people we ask to teach on Follow 2 because we really want them to impart something powerful, for it to be ministry, not just teaching. So it's a great place to meet people. I remember when I did Follow 2, I'm still friends with the people I did Follow 2 with, like we're Follow 2 buddies, because I would never have met them outside of that. And I actually remember when I did Follow 2, it was the first time I think I really had like a really deep, meaningful conversation with Dan about my desire to be in ministry. God used it powerfully. Like, did I know most of the stuff on Follow 2? Probably. But it's a great reminder. It's a great journey to take. There's so much that you can get out of it. And I just want to encourage people to do it. Then you'll see, you might have thought, that we'd have Follow 3 next. But actually what we have next on the growth track, if I can read that far. Oh, it's Freedom Day. I actually got glasses a few years ago. I should wear them. Freedom Day is amazing because I run it. No, I'm just kidding. I'm very passionate about it. Freedom Day is an amazing course for people who are stuck and for people who don't know that they're stuck. So all the people. And it's an amazing course to do again. Like you don't have to, you can do it more than once. It's basically a day to receive crazy, amazing teaching, impartation, ministry, like powerful ministry, and God just does stuff. For God to show up. For where people are stuck. Remember that journey? I was saying sometimes people are just stuck. If you've got people in your life or you yourself, you're stuck, maybe your next step is Freedom Day. Because it helps you get unstuck. But I also want to say, we only do Freedom Day twice a year. And I found myself the other day, like somebody couldn't do it. So I was like, thinking like, I'm not going to recommend, like you've come to me with like a really serious problem, you need Freedom Day, but I'm not going to recommend you wait till November. Let's do some prayer ministry. Like don't make people wait if they've got like a serious need, they're seriously stuck. We've got amazing prayer ministry teams. We've got a pastoral care team. I meet with a lot of people. Refer if you need to, or do the ministry yourself if you feel equipped. But Freedom Day is an amazing place for people to get unstuck and to realize places where they are stuck that they didn't know before. Then we've got engaged training. Again, it's amazing. We want every disciple to make disciples. And often we think evangelism is for the evangelists, but engaged training is for everybody. It's basically how to share the gospel without being weird. Like, that's what you're going to learn, which is great. I don't know about you, but like I really needed to learn that because I always felt weird and then I just didn't do it. But it's really, really practical. I actually want to do engaged training again because when I did it, it was one full day and it was like so intense. And now they do it like over a few weeks. And I'm like, I need to do it again. I need to be refreshed in that. But that is an amazing course. And again, we're still not at Follow 3. We want to do some training. So Follow 3 is about leadership. And we want people to lead first before they, get to that point. And so the next step really is group leader training. If you've got people in your groups who you feel could be leading, let them do group leader training. We've made it an online course on demand. It's literally watch 9 videos, and I gave strict instructions to those teachers that they were not allowed to go over 10 minutes. And so maybe there's some that are like 10 minutes and 20 seconds. But they're short videos, short notes. It's not a crazy commitment, but it's really powerful to get people to feel like, oh, maybe I could lead a group. Maybe I could step into that. But we recognize that not everyone is called to be a group leader. That's okay. It may not be appropriate for some people, may not be what they're called to, but we do really feel like everybody's called to use their gifts to serve and to lead in some capacity. And then you might need ministry training, maybe because you're on the hosting team, or you're serving on the kids team, or you are serving on AV or the prayer ministry team. They all have their own training. And we want people to be plugged in, to be doing those things. And then we get to Follow 3, because you're leading and you're serving. And that is an even greater commitment. I think it's 7, 8, 9, I don't know, 7 weeks? I think it's 7 weeks. And that's where you're really going to be equipped to get those tools, how to build a team, how to have hard conversations, how to lead with God's energy, all sorts of amazing, amazing equipping. And then after that, Leadership 215. So we heard about that in a couple of services ago. That really is that's even more of a commitment. You see, we're just upping the ante, because if people are hungry for the things of God, they will commit to more things. And we recognize not everybody in our church is going to get up to the level of Leadership 215. And they won't want to, they won't need to, and that's okay. But I really believe that this church is a sending church. And this is an apostolic church that's going to send people to the nations. And if we want to send people to the nations, we want to send them to make a massive impact. And I think just doing follow one isn't going to help. We want people to get up to Leadership 215. We want people to get up to ENSM, Every Nation School of Ministry, to be equipped to use their gifts. And that may be in vocational full-time ministry, and it may just be because you want to go and you're still going to carry on being an engineer or a teacher or whatever, but you want to be equipped to build God's kingdom and to build the church. And so that is our growth track. If you have any more questions about it, if there's stuff that you don't understand, if you feel like, hey, I don't know how to promote this because I don't really know, please talk to me or talk to Dan, talk to someone, because it's really important that we understand why we do this. It's not just because we feel like putting stuff on. We believe in it. It's actually a lot of hard work to put all these things on. But we really believe and trust that God uses it. And disciples are being made through this growth track. And as I said, discipleship, it's not about programs and courses. It is about relationship. And we want to make sure that people are growing in relationship and not just going through like the sausage machine and come out as like fully formed disciples. But I want to say as well, this is the reason why our groups are so important. This relational discipleship is happening in this context. Just to end, before we go into our second break, I wanted you to just reflect on this question. Who are you discipling and who is discipling you? Right? If we think about life as this journey, and if discipleship is our greatest calling, right? To be disciples and to make disciples. Like nothing is more important. Wherever you are on the journey, I want to ask you and I want to challenge you. Look ahead. Who is there that you want to learn from? That you want to grow with? What is your next step? It might not be a person. I think it's got to be a person and a next step. But I want to ask you, we're not going to discuss this, but just for you in this moment to look ahead and go, who is actually discipling me? Because that's really important. Discipleship doesn't end. Who is discipling you? And then asking, what is my next step? Maybe there is something on the growth track that's next for you. Maybe it's not on the growth track. Maybe there's a book that you know you need to read. Or you need to reach out to someone and say, hey, will you mentor me? Because I am hungry and I want to grow. Do it. If they say no, ask somebody else. But who is discipling you? How are you growing? Where do you need to grow? And then the second thing I want you to reflect on is, who are you discipling? When you are on your journey, who is behind you? And it may be people in your Connect group. It may be really obvious. Maybe people who are not in your Connect group, who are in your life. Maybe your kids or family members. Maybe actually like a load of people. What do you offer to help other people grow? And it may be that on that growth track, there's something for you to offer. Maybe you want to teach on the Follow course. Maybe you want to come to Freedom Day and do prayer ministry. Maybe there's a team that you should be joining. Maybe you should do Leadership 215. I mean, you can't teach on it. It's already been taught. But what is there that you can do? What are you offering to disciple other people? And I really felt when I was preparing was this thing that you need to be free to not chase after people who are not hungry. But I think sometimes we do that with our groups, right? We have all these groups of people, we feel like, well, I better disciple them, I better push them up the growth track. Like they're so unwilling. And just to be free, but then to ask God to give you eyes to see who are the people who are hungry and what can you offer them? Because if you find those people, and sometimes they're hidden, and you can pray for God to maybe open your eyes and for them to approach you, but who are the hungry people? Intentionally invest in them. But do it. Intentionally invest in them. You have things to offer to help other people. So I'm going to leave you with those two questions. Who is discipling you and who are you discipling? What is your next step? And what do you have to offer the people who are coming along the journey?